Hello, and welcome to Michell Consulting Group's webinar series. This is for our Michell University. Today we're going to be working with Infor FACTS and talking about the banking system. This webinar will be recorded and it will be available on our website, so you can view it at www.michellgroup.com. So again, today we're going to talk about Infor FACTS and we're going to talk about the banking system and bank reconciliation. You can see here from my main menu, the banking system and bank information is actually in the system management. So we're going to go to system management and the banking system. This is due for security reasons because the bank reconciliation will have checks from both the AP system and the payroll system. So we store it here in the system management. So again, we can take care of it with authorizations. So let's start with the banking system. The first thing we're going to look at is some setup. We're going to look at the bank file maintenance and the bank control file maintenance. We're going to go into our bank file maintenance, select our bank. Again, our first tab is general information about the bank. We have the bank name, the address, the contact, the phone, the routing number, the bank account number. We see here the current balance in the bank, and the GL account linked to our bank. We can also add security codes, so we can restrict access or limit access to what we can see in the bank program. The second tab is a reconciliation, and this controls what we see in the reconciliation in the entry screens for the bank transactions. So you can see here we have the option of using a deposit system. This is an option in FACTS that allows you to take deposits from sales orders or monies taken over the register in our daily sales register and store them in a bank clearing account. This is useful when you're dealing with retail. For example, you may have a lot of cash transactions or credit card transactions on the counter, and that money is being stored in a cash drawer. So we're not going to really affect the bank until we make our deposit to the bank. So we don't want to update the GL account that's tied to the bank account because that money hasn't been deposited yet. We want to go in later and deposit it. So we can actually set up to use a deposit system along with a clearing account. When the deposit is made, the money will be removed out of the clearing account and will be put into the actual bank account. We have the option of automatically creating the deposits. We have the option of separate deposits for credit cards we can also do. We can also do separate deposits for debit cards if we want to separate these. So we can basically have cash, credit, and debit cards. Use bank reconciliation. When we turn this on, we're going to actually use the bank reconciliation. This means that the postings that affect the bank will update the bank reconciliation file. We also have the last time we did our bank rec and the ending balance from the last bank reconciliation. We have some historical information. Again, we have the last AP check register that we've done, the last manual check, the last deposit ticket, and the last payroll. We also have for electronic payments, if we want to use electronic payments, we can turn this on. This will create ACH payments within files. It will be stored in a directory, and those directories can then be exported and sent to the bank or imported for electronic funds. We see here in our bank control file maintenance, we can determine again how we handle that. We can see that for bank transfers, okay, we have a clearing account. As you'll see, we can actually transfer money from one bank to another. Again, this behaves like the deposit. We may want to take the money out of one bank, put it into a clearing account, and then deposit it into the other bank. GL distribution, again, within FACTS, you have the option of we're going to print and post. We have our miscellaneous journals, and we have auto-display bank notes and the last transaction record. This is part of the initial setup when we install FACTS. So once we set that up, there's really no reason to go in there unless we need to make some changes to account or add new banks. So let's start with the bank transaction entry. The bank transaction entry allows me to go in, and you can use the bank transaction entry to create and edit open bank transactions, such as deposit, bank transfers, miscellaneous bank transfers, and non-bank transfers. So again, we can do a search. I'm going to call up our bank. We have the status. We can look at just what's open or all. We're going to look at open transactions. We're going to include the non-bank transactions. So we see here. So again, to talk about the transactions, we can actually go in here and we can add types of transactions or make changes to transactions. This is also useful when we're installing FACTS for the first time and we're going live. We're going to go live on, say, the first of the month, but from our old system, we could have a bank reconciliation program that we used, so we'll need to go in and enter the outstanding checks, because this information is updated based on the postings from the FACTS modules. So again, when you go live on the system, you might want to add all the outstanding checks that you currently have. Let's go here and add a line, and let's look at the different types of transactions. We have deposits, miscellaneous bank transactions, bank transfers, and non-bank transactions. Non-bank transactions are a way to take money that was originally intended to go into the bank and direct it to some other GL account. For example, of a non-bank transaction is credit card processing fees coming out of the credit card deposit for the day. These transactions create records in the transaction header file with new transaction number and 0 number sequence. You can also change and update or complete the transactions. The miscellaneous bank transactions allow you to enter transactions that affect the bank balance and the bank GL, and then indicate via the GL number what other account to post it to. Miscellaneous bank transactions are not created from other functions in FACTS. For example, a miscellaneous bank transaction would be a bank service charge. So again, let's see what we're doing here. Again, we can actually create a deposit. So as we set up our interim deposit, we have here the option of doing a deposit. We're going to put a date. We're going to put this date here. We're going to put an amount of our deposit. We can either enter the amount before we do the deposit, or we can select afterwards. We can put a memo of what the deposit's for. And then we can see here. So these are deposits that, again, have come into the system, into that temporary file. You can see this one comes from the daily sales register, and these are credit memos from checks. So what I would do is I would select, so I want to select the 450, and I want to select the 784, and say that one there. So you can see by selecting, what I'm doing is I'm just adding as I go along. I could also, for checks and balances purposes, I can add up, what I'm going to enter. I can enter the amount. That way, if I'm out of balance, I will have an out of balance condition. But again, you can see here, so we're going to select those, and we're going to click Done. And you can see here that we added a new transaction on this date. We added a new deposit. We can also do a miscellaneous bank transactions. Again, this would be something going into the system, like a service charge, something that we see on our bank statement. Maybe it's a miscellaneous fee that we didn't enter before. So we can enter a fee. We can put it against a specific GL account. So we can search our general ledger and say this is a bank charge. So we want to do the offset. We click OK. And we can see now what we have, the bank charge. We have the bank charge, so we're going to put it against the bank, and we're going to offset it with a GL account. The non-bank transaction works like the deposit. Again, we can go ahead and we can select a non-bank transaction, and we can set here and go and see exactly what we want to put it against, as we did with the deposit. We also have here a bank transfer. So what we can do is now we're going to transfer, so we can put our date, the amount we want to transfer, and then here we can go ahead and select the bank. So we're going to transfer from bank 1 to bank 2. You can see the GL account is grayed out because we don't need it in this one. We're going to go from actually one bank to another. We can execute the funds transfer. And again, we will see it here. So the bank transaction entry screen allows us to enter information into the bank reconciliation program outside of the other standard postings. So these are things that did not get posted from AP checks or payroll checks or cash receipts, deposits, or deposits from the daily sales register. Okay, we have a bank transaction register. So if we want to see what we've done, we can again run a bank transaction register. We can go here and we can say again, if we want to include the non-bank transactions, we have the ability of putting in a date. And right now you can see my GL current period is June of 2010. Okay, we can again select all our transactions if we want. We can pick various transactions. And we can go ahead and click OK. We have to use that date. And again, we can see what we've entered here. We can see the open bank transactions, the deposits that we put in. We can go ahead and see the deposit we just entered today. And we can see, again, the miscellaneous we did and the transfer. So the transfer here is the O. It's coming out of the system. So again, we have the bank register that this allows us to look at the transactions that we have entered into the system. Again, we can print the register. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to update these transactions because now we have to post them. So we can see the effect on the cash. We're debiting this amount, doing the credit for the transfers. We can see the cash clearing account. We can see that we're using the transfer clearing account for $500 transfer. And we can see the bank charges that we entered are going against the GL account we entered. We say yes to update. And now we've updated. We go back to the register. Again, we can see the effect. Because those now are not here because of the status of open. We look at all. We can look at all the transactions. So we've taken those miscellaneous transactions that we have entered, and we've actually updated the system. We're doing what the other FACTS modules would do. When you do your accounts payable checks and you do your update, or you do your cash receipts and you update, those transactions are affected directly to the bank reconciliation. So the bank transaction entry screen allows us to make transactions or entries to the bank, which will then affect the bank reconciliation that are not coming from the other systems. Again, as we saw, things like bank charges, credit card fee processes, or our deposit programs were set up. The money we took on the counter, on the registers, are sitting in a temporary account, and we're moving those to actually make our deposits within the bank. And again, here, if you want, you have the option of viewing details, as you would in standard FACTS. Okay, and again, you saw we have the bank transaction register, and here we have the bank reconciliation. Before I go into that, I'm going to go to the bank inquiry. Again, this is an inquiry screen that you can do. So we can go here, and we can set our filters. So again, the status, we want to look at maybe what has been reconciled. You can see this. You want to see what has not been reconciled. We have the ability of looking at what was cleared, okay, but not reconciled yet, and again, not cleared. And we can decide how we want to sort this. So we can do our sorts. Again, like we have in standard FACTS, we can do our sorts. We can look at our transaction types. Again, AP checks, payroll checks, return checks, deposits, transfers, and miscellaneous. We can also enter a cutoff date. So if we're working with a given time, we can just put a cutoff date so we only see back at that particular time. We can change our filters at any time, as our default filters are coming up here. Okay, and then if we select a line, we can view our details. The inquiry screen lets us see where we are in the system. Let's look at the bank reconciliation itself. So let's open this up. Okay, and again, we select our bank. Our default is Bank 1, but we can go here and select our bank. We have our statement ending date. We put our ending balance. Here's our beginning balance. So the beginning balance will be from the bank, from the first reconciliation we did. As we saw from the bank file maintenance, we did not do a bank reconciliation. So this would be, the beginning balance would be coming from the last bank reconciliation. So that's why we have 0. The ending balance would be the balance from your bank statement. So for example, right now I'm just going to put $1 in, and we see our difference. So here we see all the information in the system. We can do a few things. We can clear. We can sort by the status type. So if we click on status, we're looking at, in this case, our checks and our deposits. We can do it opposite, so we can do our deposits. Maybe we want to clear out our deposits. So again, we can say here we have this amount. We can clear one at a time. So we can say, I'm going to go ahead and clear this deposit. You can see that the flag is cleared, and we have our deposit amount. You can see that our difference shows up here because we cleared this money, and our ending balance is only $1. For purposes of the demo, I'm just going to go clear first. I'm going to go back and put the ending balance. So again, we can clear like that. So let's clear those. We can also clear a range when we're dealing with checks, because typically a lot of our checks will clear. Again, we can clear one check at a time, as we're doing here, or we can go clear a range. So we can go to the range, and if we have a group of checks, we can say, let me enter the beginning check number and the ending check number to clear an actual range of checks. So we have the option of doing that as well. So here we see these two, and again, if we want to unclear something, we can highlight the line. We can unclear it, or we can go ahead and clear it. So in this case, we've cleared these deposits and this one here. Okay, we can look at view details. So if we want to see what makes this up, we can actually view the detail. This is transaction 31. You can see the date it was created, the memo. This is coming from the daily sales register. You can see here, and this was a credit card payment. We enter 9/8/2038, we should have it. So in this case, what we did, and I'm doing this for purposes of the reconciliation, you notice when my different amount hits 0, we can now reconcile. So we have the ability of doing that. So I'm going to put my ending balance in, and you can see here that we have a difference of 0. At that point, we can do a reconciliation, which is right here. The update allows you to update within the process and come back. So if you don't want to wait till the end of the month, let's say you want to come in, you want to put your statement balance, and you want to go in maybe a week at a time. Maybe you go online. You have a lot of bank transactions. You want to go online on a daily basis or weekly basis. So you can clear what came in. You can click Update, which will save what you cleared, and then you can exit and come back in. Eventually, when you're done, you can see here, you're at the reconciliation point. So I click Reconcile. This will mark all clear transactions as reconciled, and no further changes will be allowed. Again, this is a warning to let you know, so we're going to say, yes, continue with the reconciliation. We're going to click OK. You can see now we reconciled. So let's exit here. Let's go back to the bank file maintenance. We're going to put in our bank 01. And you're going to see here what's happening. So now we've gone in. Our last statement balance was June 30th, 2010, and our ending balance is this amount. This gets updated from the reconciliation. We go back into the bank reconciliation. our O1. You can see that my beginning balance was the balance from the last bank rec, and so on. So I would continue on this way. That allows me to actually do the bank reconciliation. Let's exit that. So we saw that the bank transaction listing. Again, if we want to look here, we can look at a bank transaction listing. And this is a standard report. We can look at the date or the transaction number. We can put a beginning date and ending date. We can see what bank we want to use, our status. Look at, say, reconciled, what types are being reconciled. And we can print cash and check details if we want, print adjustment details. Let's go to my print options. Let's just set this to file. And again here, we can see we completed the reconciliation. So we can see these transactions were reconciled. We can see the check numbers, all the information. We can see the types. So this reconciliation had 7 transactions. So again, to recap what we've done, we go into, from the main menu, our banking is in the system management. We go to system management, banking system. Again, this is for security purposes because we're dealing with checks from payroll. So again, we have our bank file maintenance and our bank control file maintenance. If we want to create a new bank, we would go to our bank file maintenance. We would select our bank or define new. We call up one we already have. The first one is the general information. We have our bank name and address, our contacts, our phone, our routing numbers, bank accounts, and so on. We're tracking the current balance. This is the link between my general ledger account and my bank. So this is my GL account for this bank. Again, we can use security codes to have unrestricted access and limited access to certain things within the bank files. We look at our reconciliation, how we're going to do it. In this case, we're using a deposit system. The deposit system that allows me to take monies from the daily sales register, typically over-the-counter, cash, check, credit cards, and so on. We're going to post those to a clearing account. We're not going to affect the actual bank account, and we're going to do that within the banking program. This is important, especially when you're in a retail environment, because you are taking a lot of money on the registers, but you have not closed out those registers, and you have not deposited the money into the bank. So we don't want to make that money available in the general ledger until it actually hits the bank. When we use our depositing system, we use a bank clearing account. This is just the intermediate account. You saw that when we actually did a transaction. So when we do a deposit, we're going to clear it. So we're going to take it out of that clearing account, and we're going to actually post it to the actual GL account for the bank. We can automatically create the deposits, which we have here. Okay, we can do a separate deposit for credit cards, and we can do a separate deposit for debit cards. This right now says that for this bank 01, we are using the bank reconciliation module. This needs to be turned on. If this is not turned on and you post accounts payable checks or payroll checks or post your daily sales register, it will not update the bank reconciliation file. So if you want to use the bank reconciliation file, this needs to be turned on. This tracks the last time we've done a bank statement, the ending date, and the last balance from the last bank statement. This will become the beginning balance for your next statement. You have historical. Again, you have the AP last check register, the last manual number, and so on. And again, for electronic payments, you can set up electronic payments in here. Again, this will set the directories for the electronic payments, and this will be in detail in one of our other training classes of how to use this program. You have the bank control file maintenance. Okay, here we're setting the transfer clearing account, as you saw before. When we did a transfer from one account to another, this is the intermediate account that we're putting the money in before we move it to the other account. My GL distribution, I'm doing a post and print. For my journals, when I enter miscellaneous transactions, non-bank transactions, and so on, you saw. This is the journal it's going to use. You can set it to automatically display bank notes, and it's keeping track of the last transaction. So we see here now we have our bank transaction entry screen. The screen is used to enter information into the banking module outside of SAP. You can see the other ones were updated, so we just have this one here. Again, the bank reconciliation, these transactions are updated from the posting modules of FACTS. So when we post our daily sales register in FACTS, or we post our cash receipts, or we do our AP checks, this information is updated. We have the ability to create outside of that transaction types. As we saw, we can do a deposit. Deposit takes the transactions from the temporary file. So in the case of the daily sales register, if we took credit card payments and debit card payments and cash payments on the counter, these are sitting in the temp file. This is a deposit program. We can select which transactions we're going to make our deposit. We can put our deposit and our deposit date into the system. We can do miscellaneous bank transactions. These will be things like bank charges and so on that we need to affect our bank, that are on our bank statement, but are entered at this time. We can do a bank transfer. So we can transfer from one bank to another if we want to move funds back and forth. We can also do a non-bank transaction. A non-bank transaction would be things like a credit card processing or other processing, things that we need to affect the bank and the corresponding general ledger accounts. Our bank transaction register allows us to print or display a register that we're working with. And again, we can select all transactions, or we can go in and we can search transactions. We can say grab this one here. Okay, that one's out of balance, but we can go ahead and select it. We can click OK. And again, we have nothing to print because we just went through the process of posting all this. But normally we would print it and we'd post it. So these are looking at the transactions. Let's just do one so we can see it. Let's add a miscellaneous transfer. And again, we're going to put a date of enter a transaction here. And again, we would select our GL account, our offset. This is a bank charge. Okay, and click OK. So we see our transaction in there. And again, like standard FACTS, this transaction is in the system in a temporary mode. We need to update that. So what we need to do now is run the register and update it. So we're going to go to the bank transaction register. Enter our date. I'm going to select all. And again here, we can see our transaction we just entered. We can see that here's the amount. This is the offset account. So this is my register. So of course, once I print my register, it's going to ask me to update. We can say yes to the GL distribution. You can see the effect. Again, the cash account, which is linked to the bank account. I'm going to debit that account, and we're going to credit the bank charge account here. Okay, I actually did that backwards. It should have been a minus. Go ahead and do that. And we're going to say yes, update. We're going to update the register. So now that's in our bank reconciliation. So when we go to our bank reconciliation, now we're going to see all the transactions. And again, you're looking at the dates. It knows now based on the last bank reconciliation we've done. And again, we can look at all our transactions. We click on transaction date. We can see the one we did down here, our manual charge. And you can see these were all created from the system. You can see these came from the AP check registers. These deposits came from the cash receipts. And these transactions came from the payroll register. So this is the information coming from the standard postings of facts as well as our miscellaneous we've entered. And again, we would select the ones we want. We can go through here. We can start. We can click Update. So we can clear a transaction or two. If we want to stop, we can go in and clear them. We can unclear them. We can update at any time, stop and come back in. Once our difference is equal to 0, our reconciliation will be active, and we can reconcile. Again, we have our bank inquiry, okay, which we can look. We can inquire within the bank. Again, we can say our filters. We want to look at everything that's been reconciled. We want to look at everything that's been cleared, not cleared, and so on. We can transaction type. We can all look at, let's say, not cleared AP checks. See that? Maybe not cleared deposits. See that? How do we want to see them? Our sorting. We can sort by the description, transaction date, the actual transaction date, the transaction number of the description, and the actual transaction numbers here. We can enter a cutoff date. So, for example, if we want to say today was 06/18/10, okay, we won't see the other ones. We can do our cutoff dates. Okay, and it gives us the ability to change our filters and so on. And we have our listing. We also have our bank transaction removal. Okay, you need to be careful when you run this. What this will do, this will actually remove transactions from the file. Sometimes after years you have a lot of information. You don't want to keep back that far. Fax allows you to go in and remove it. We do not recommend moving this unless you absolutely have to. And if you do, please make a backup of your system, a backup tape, just in case you need to go back into it. But you can use these removal, and you can actually put a cutoff date, and it will remove all transactions. So that concludes our webinar today on FACTS, the banking system. Again, this webinar is being recorded. This will be available on our website. You can go to www.michellgroup.com and view the link. Once again, we thank you for your time. And you can, like I said, you can go on to our website, www.michellgroup.com, to view the recording. Thank you.